well, we will begin. We're on chapter 10. The last verse of chapter 9 kind of leads us into chapter 10. And it says, well, all right, well, I need to catch us all back up. So so we remember what's going on. Like, Eli was leading everyone. He was kind of like a judge type of idea, but his kids weren't very good. And it seems like by the call of Samuel from God that Eli kind of misses the boat on what happens there. And so Samuel kind of rises up in prominence, but he's got some issues with kids too, which is kind of interesting. And the God's people are crying out for a king just like everyone else. And I think it's kind of interesting that they're crying for a king, because to me, that kind of sounds like the continual cry of God's people to go back to other places. So it kind of sounds like that they're kind of pining after Egypt again. And if you've been around me enough, there's, like in Deuteronomy, it says, do not chase after Egyptian horses. We see in Kings, it's after Samuel, that Solomon's downfall is all of a sudden he's got all these Egyptian horses, things like that. It's not the Egyptian horses that's the bad thing. It's code for going over the things of Egypt, and I think the captivity that happens, the Babylonian captivity, it's my philosophy that it is that God's like, well, if you want to be like Babylon so much, if you want to have kings like them, if you want to rule like them, if you want to be powerful like them, then you can just be them. And then that's the captivity. I think when you look at it like that, it all makes sense. Like it all brings together a bunch of ideas. And so I could be wrong about it.
Do you think that's where the original Keeping Up with the Joneses came?
Well, I think that's a strong idea because of that, because that's always a temptation is to want what the other things that are going on around us, like that this is what I want to do. This is what I do. Like that's a big part of just living in society in general. It's not bad. It can lead to good things. It can lead to bad things. Like that's.
Everybody wants to fit in.
Yeah. Like that. That's like, and because when we don't fit in, we're alone, and we're definitely people that are not meant to be alone. Stuff like that. So we're not like Bengal tigers or something like that in the woods. We're not meant to be alone, type of thing. So we have much more in common with like wolves and dogs and meerkats and like that. Meerkats like that. That's where we're much more social than that. So all right. So that kind of catches up, and we have the anointing of Saul today. Like I said earlier, I didn't prepare as much as I should have for today. I usually kind of read ahead. So we'll see how far we get and try to keep things pretty orderly around here. We'll see how that goes. So, all right. So the last verse of chapter 9, verse 27 goes as this. As they were going down to the outskirts of the city, Samuel said to Saul, tell the servant to go ahead of us. And he went on, but you stand here a while that I may announce to you the word of God. All right. So he announces the word here. So the word of the Lord. All right. Does it say word of God in the Jewish one? Okay. That's
because that might show you.
So like that's, so I was.
I'll make known to you the word of God.
Make known to you the word of God. So that's okay. So let's see. We need to share a screen here, and we'll share sound, and we'll optimize it for video. And then we hit this button, and then we got to go back over here. All right, here we go.
And Samuel took a flute, put it on his head, kissed him, and said,
is it not because the Lord has anointed you commander over his inheritance? When you have departed from me today, You will find 2 men by Rachel's tomb in the territory of Benjamin and Zelda. And they will say to you, the donkeys which you went to look for have been found. And now your father has ceased caring about the donkeys and is worrying about you, saying, what shall I do about my son? Then you shall go on forward from there and come to the terebinth tree of Tabor. There 3 men going up to God at Bethel will meet you. One carrying 3 young goats, another carrying 3 loaves of bread, and another carrying a skin of wine. And they will greet you and give you 2 loaves of bread, which you shall receive from their hands. After that, you shall come to the hill of God, where the Philistine garrison is. And it will happen, when you have come there to the city, that you will meet a group of prophets coming down from the high place with a stringed instrument, a tambourine, a flute, and a harp before them. And they will be prophesying. Then the Spirit of the Lord will come upon you, and you will prophesy with them and be turned into another man. And let it be, when these signs come to you, that you do as the occasion demands. For God is with you. You shall go down before me to Gilgal, and surely I will come down to you to offer burnt offerings and make sacrifices of peace offerings. 7 days you shall wait till I come to you and show you what you should do.
So it was, when he had turned his back to go from Samuel, that God gave him another heart. And all those signs came to pass that day. When they came there to the hill, there was a group of prophets to meet him. Then the Spirit of God came upon him, and he prophesied among them. And it happened, when all who knew him formerly saw that he had indeed prophesied among the prophets, that the people said to one another,
what is this that has come upon the son of Kish? Is Saul also among the prophets?
Then a man from there answered,
but who is their father?
Therefore it became a proverb, is Saul also among the prophets? When he had finished prophesying, he went to the high place. Then Saul's uncle said to him and his servant,
Where did you go? To look for the donkeys. When we saw that they were nowhere to be found, we went to Samuel. Tell me, please, what Samuel said to you. He told us plainly that the donkeys had been found.
But about the matter of the kingdom, he did not tell him what Samuel had said. Then Samuel called the people together to the Lord at Mizpah and said to the children of Israel,
Thus says the Lord God of Israel, I brought up Israel out of Egypt and delivered you from the hand of the Egyptians and from the hand of all kingdoms and from those who oppressed you. But you have today rejected your God, who himself saved you from all your adversities and your tribulations. And you have said to him, no, set a king over us. Now therefore, present yourselves before the Lord by your tribes and by your clans.
And when Samuel had caused all the tribes of Israel to come near, the tribe of Benjamin was chosen. When he had caused the tribe of Benjamin to come near by their families, the family of Matri was chosen. And Saul, the son of Kish, was chosen. But when they sought him, he could not be found. Therefore they inquired of the Lord further,
Has the man come here yet?
There he is, hidden among the equipment.
So they ran and brought him from there. When he stood among the people, he was taller than any of the people from his shoulders upward. Samuel said to all the people,
Do you see him whom the Lord has chosen? That there is no one like him among all the people?
So all the people shouted,
Long live the king!
and Samuel explained to the people the behavior of royalty, and wrote it in a book, and laid it up before the Lord. And Samuel sent all the people away, every man to his house. And Saul also went home to Gibeah, and valiant men went with him, whose hearts God had touched. Some rebels said,
How can this man save us?
So they despised him, and brought him no presents. But he held his peace.
Okay. All right, we'll talk about that here for a little bit. It's kind of, there's like a lot of backstory going on here. So what kind of stood out to you on this section?
Every time they said prophet, this one says prophetic frenzy.
Prophetic frenzy. That's NIV. I take it. Looks like NIV. No, New Revised. Okay.
Revised Standard.
New Revised Standard. All right. That's fun. So what else kind of stood out to you?
And in verse 5, verse 5, they actually say the name of the place that they went to, Gibeah Elohim.
Okay, yeah. Yeah. So go Elohim. So
That the
So that's in the other translations, that's verse 5 that says Gibeath of God, right? So
this is the place of the Philistines, I believe, and this says Gibeah Elohim.
so that's Elohim.
Elohim, yeah.
Yeah, so so Elohim is God. And so you have El, which means God, and then if anyone's ever learned another language, that how they pluralize it, or you can find out if it's masculine or neuter or feminine or something like that, how they have different endings. Im is a plural ending. And so the Hebrews, when they're talking about God, they have Elohim. So El is God. And so Elohim, Im is a plural ending. So like if you're reading it literally, you would read it gods, but that was their attempt to try to make it bigger than just normal
to
stuff.
magnify it.
And this is all, I talked about this on Sunday too, but this is all just how the language works. Arabic does the same thing. Their word for God is all, and their Allah is singular. It's singular. So you can see Allah. So that's just them saying God. Okay. Mm-hmm. So like that. So you see then how this works, where in the Old Testament, they're like the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. So like that. So, it would be, it's not Alim is how Arabic would say what they're saying, but they have a similar declension. Arabic and Hebrew are very similar languages, very similar. I mean, they grew up in the same part of the world. And so they over there, but I just wanted to show you how kind of the language works. But that's funny that they didn't translate that.
Gibeah?
Yeah. So we have the first word where they just our English translations are translating it God in verse 5.
My Bible says for verses 11 through 12, some who had known Saul previously were surprised to see someone of a higher class acting like one of the ecstatic prophets who were of dubious parentage.
So where is that? Where is that?
Verse 11 and 12.
Verse 11 and 12. The so that's
where I said who the authors.
Yeah. So 12. Then the man answered, said, "But who is the father?" therefore it became a problem when Saul was among the prophets. So they're calling them prophets there. How is the Jewish Bible translating that?
That one says prophets.
So
Up
the,
above it says those who were speaking in ecstasy.
we're speaking in ecstasy.
Or ecstatic.
Yeah, ecstatic. Yeah.
But that
That's interesting.
dubious parentage.
Yeah.
That's who are their
The
fathers.
prophets did not come from distinguished families.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
That's what it says in the Jewish. The other prophets do not come from the distinguished family, like Saul. So why is he affiliating with them?
Okay. Yeah.
Affiliated
So
with
like,
them.
so there's, and you can kind of see there's, it's good storytelling. Remember, like we're crafting stories here, all these things. They are crafting things, especially at the end of it, where some were rebels and how can this man save us? Right at the end, you could see it kind of pushing in to the next bit of the story. So that's a good thing. So they're kind of questioning like who is this guy and all these things. You have this whole story about the donkeys too, which is
They keep it going.
yeah, they which is interesting. So like they end up finding the donkeys type of thing. And so that's an interesting thing. Now, how did you guys read that? Did you read it like that kind of shows that Samuel is a bit of a prophet there? That he's like, oh, they found the donkeys now? Or
Also, like that Saul's not very confident. He couldn't find the donkeys. He ran out of food.
yeah.
Yeah.
That's kind of
money.
that's so that this is what we were talking about last week too, is the Jewish Bible doesn't talk about that really. That's it. But the Protestant Bibles, they nail. They're like Saul was bad, and I thought that was a very interesting distinction that they and I have a feeling that's because in our Protestant sensibilities, we're like Saul was a bad king. We like to make good or bad distinctions. We don't really like middle of the road stuff too much. And so Saul was bad, David is good, type of black and white. I can't remember when it happened to me, but I formed my favorite way to explain the world now is someone's like, well, this is just a black and white issue to me. And I'm like, that's fine. It's just too bad God created the world in color. That's I like saying, because that's and so I think it's very interesting that the Jewish Study Bible is complementary to Saul and the Protestants aren't. And so but I do think there's a bit of a storyline there of those donkeys and now they're bringing them up again, like they're now found, and his father is worried about Saul. He doesn't know where he is. Doesn't know what's going on there. I don't really know what to make of it, but it's
the father doesn't have confidence in him.
Oh, yeah. See, that's an interesting.
Okay.
Yeah.
As a shepherd, he should have gone alone for the missing asses, but he didn't. The father had to assign a steward to go with him.
Okay. Yeah. That's a good reading. That's a good
like, this son you want.
Yeah.
Tall but not smart.
Yeah. Good looking but stupid.
Yeah. Old enough.
They also say, though, that his heart is changed, that God changes his heart
Okay.
at one point. And then at that point, nobody really recognizes him as his own self.
Yeah.
Like, what happened to him? He's different now.
Yeah.
So the incompetence in him in the beginning, to me, has changed because now God's leading him
Okay.
to wherever he's going.
Yeah. So there's also some more interesting things that we get into, kind of the 17 following. So like verse 19, I kind of noticed these, but you have rejected your God who himself saved you from all your adversaries and your tribulations, and and you have said to him, no, set a king over us. Like in the proclamation of Saul being king, there's a little bit of a like
You wanted this.
yeah, you wanted this, and it seems like it kind of calls back to all the story that we've got to till now, with them being in the wilderness, the judges, all these things that God has set them forward, and he's like, no, but you want this king. And so then they kind of separate everyone out into the different tribes. Then they call forward Benjamin, and it's again, I don't know much about the tribes, but I know about Benjamin. Benjamin is the last son of Jacob, and Joseph and Benjamin were the only ones from Rachel. Yeah. Which is all the other ones were from Leah. All the other sons were from Leah. And so you remember, like, he had two wives, he was tricked into marrying Leah. And so, and the reason why he's tricked into marrying Leah, because he was tricking his own uncle. We won't get into that, but it's all of his kids come from Leah, and only Joseph came from Rachel. Like, I remember I grew up with that story, and it was like, oh, like, why did Jacob love Joseph more than all the others? Well, he's from the one he loved, the one life he loved, yeah, like that. And then Benjamin's also from that. So I think there's probably some subtleties with the tribes that's connected to that. But I don't know. Again, I should study more of that, and I just haven't.
How about the signs? Should we be looking at the when he's anointed right in the very beginning, the first verse? He's anointed with oil, and then when they talk about, is it the third verse? When Samuel's telling him what you're to do, should we be seeing more of what this means?
Let's see here.
There's numbers that are
there's 3 men going
3, 7.
Yeah. Those are all good numbers. Like, that's 3, 3 sevens, and all those things. And so, like, I think there's an underlying, like, hey, this is good.
Kids.
Yeah. I think.
And then the 3 loaves, and
they're like emoji happy faces.
Okay.
That's
more to that.
Yeah, I kind of missed that, but I think they're good numbers. There's no 6s in there. There's no. All these things. So that's going over there. Now, there is something weird I want to talk about, and it's verse 22. And so they bring up Benjamin and all that stuff, and right before verse 22, it's like, and Saul son of Kish was chosen, but when they sought him, he could not be found. Therefore, they inquired of the Lord, like, where is he? He's hiding among the equipment.
This says baggage.
The baggage, yeah. Like, I don't know what that means.
He's hiding. This one says he's hiding among the baggage.
I want to think the closet.
Because he shunned authority. Okay. So like, yeah. So what do you?
So the king shuns authority. Very interesting.
It's an odd little thing in here.
I just think it means he didn't pursue to be the king.
No.
To me, that's he just doesn't want. This wasn't something that he was dreaming about. He just he was out looking for donkeys. Now they're making him a king. He's like,
go
home and hang out.
So I think there's 2 different reads for this, and that's that it makes him look kind of humble, but it also makes him look a little inept.
Yeah.
That's a good word.
That's
proof to be the fact. Like,
yeah. And so, I don't know if they're kind of leading into that a little bit. Like, he's not.
That's why he made so many mistakes.
Yeah.
Serving.
So it's an odd. I have it from the last time we read through Samuel's. I have it. It's labeled weird, right there. And so, so he finally stood up, and then like everyone sees how tall he is, and they kind of go out, and then it talks about the rebels. So like that's yeah.
Question. Could he have been afraid of taking the position? Because just before that, we hear Samuel saying, you've rejected the Lord and you're dumping him, and, you're ignoring him. And now we're going to name this guy king. I mean, I would kind of think twice.
Yeah. No, I definitely, I definitely think that there's some fear in that. And we're going to continue seeing that.
Yeah.
Reminds
me a little of Moses when he said, why me?
Yeah. Yeah. So like so that, but you also see like we got, David and Goliath coming up and things like that.
In the beginning, you're right. It did say that he was a goodly child. He did pay attention to this religion.
Mm-hmm.
And so now they're saying, wow,
that's for David.
That's no good.
That
and now,
David, already cheap child.
Yeah. So like that's well, and so like that's, I think we're starting to see some characteristics from him come out here. But I think that's important to kind of note. So anything else from chapter 10? Well, let's go on to chapter 11 then. We'll see how things work out there. All right, here we go.
Then Nahash the Ammonite came up and encamped against Jabesh Gilead. And all the men of Jabesh said to Nahash,
"Make a covenant with us, and we will serve you."
And Nahash the Ammonite answered them,
"On this condition I will make a covenant with you, that I may put out all your right eyes and bring reproach on all Israel."
Then the elders of Jabesh said to him,
"Hold off for 7 days, that we may send messengers to all the territory of Israel. And then, if there is no one to save us, we will come out to you."
So the messengers came to Gibeah of Saul and told the news in the hearing of the people. And all the people lifted up their voices and wept. Now there was Saul coming behind the herd from the field. And Saul said,
"What troubles the people that they weep?"
And they told him the words of the men of Jabesh. Then the Spirit of God came upon Saul when he heard this news, and his anger was greatly aroused. So he took a yoke of oxen and cut them in pieces, and sent them throughout all the territory of Israel by the hands of messengers, saying,
"Whoever does not go out with Saul and Samuel to battle, so it shall be done to his oxen."
And the fear of the Lord fell on the people, and they came out with one consent. When he numbered them in Bezek, the children of Israel were 300,000, and the men of Judah 30,000. And they said to the messengers who came,
"Thus you shall say to the men of Jabesh Gilead, tomorrow, by the time the sun is hot, you shall have help."
Then the messengers came and reported it to the men of Jabesh, and they were glad. Therefore the men of Jabesh said,
"Tomorrow we will come out to you, and you may do with us whatever seems good to you."
So it was on the next day that Saul put the people in 3 companies, and they came into the midst of the camp in the morning watch, and killed Ammonites until the heat of the day. And it happened that those who survived were scattered, so that no 2 of them were left together. And the people said to Samuel,
"Who is he who said, 'Shall Saul reign over us?' Bring the men, that we may put them to death."
"Not a man shall be put to death this day, for today the Lord has accomplished salvation in Israel."
Then Samuel said to the people,
"Come, let us go to Gilgal and renew the kingdom there."
So all the people went to Gilgal, and there they made Saul king before the Lord in Gilgal. There they made sacrifices of peace offerings before the Lord, and there Saul and all the men of Israel rejoiced greatly.
Okay.
Now Samuel
Beat me to it. All right. So what did you kind of hear here? We got some kind of dissension in the ranks, it seems.
Well, my first question was answered.
Oh, yeah?
If you can interpret the voices, because Saul was talking in a very manly and authoritative and, voice.
Yeah.
As the interpreter read.
Yeah.
And yet the people that he sent out to scatter the word, then the oxen yoke were, listen to us.
Yeah.
So I assume he had to be, guys change their voice, 16? Maybe?
So like, well, yeah, I don't know.
12, 13.
But yeah, so Saul makes some kind of, it's like he gets very angry. He's out behind, all the out in the fields there, and hears about what's going on, and it sounds like someone's threatening one of the tribes, right? And no one wants to kind of come to their rescue, and Saul kind of cuts up a few of the oxen, or one oxen or something like that.
A yoke.
Yeah, a yoke. Well, it's just the yoke.
Yoke of oxen.
Okay, so yoke of oxen.
Usually.
Yeah. So it's kind of like that old mob boss routine where they'll send the thing, how where's his head, or like that. Yeah, someone's finger, like all that stuff too. That's more of the direction I was going. Like that's so like it's like, hey, you better do this and stay together. So he kind of keeps them together. So how, like, what kind of hits you in the chapter here with all that going on? Like, what do you think of Saul? What do you think have happened here? And how? Go ahead.
Credit to God for the victory.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And the text, going back to the numbers that we talked about a little bit ago, the text has good numbers there. You got 3,000, 30,000. Yeah, 300. Yeah, three. A lot of threes. Those tend to be good numbers. Mm-hmm. And so it seems like he's got the people in line, and all those things. It seems to be positive news in there. I think it's funny that they fight to the heat of the day. Like, I don't know, it's too hot now. It's like,
let's go have an iced tea.
Yeah. Like that's I think that's kind of like they show that they beat them in one day type of thing. But it's just kind of funny how it was worded in my head. It's like, I think we've killed enough. Well, I think and also the way it put it, like, and they killed Ammonites until the heat of the day. There was, like, last Wednesday, one of the videos that I showed was talking about I think it was fruitcake. And he's like, back in the Crusades when we were killing a bunch of people. It reminded me of that when it said that. They so I don't know. Anyone else have anything interesting came about?
My favorite part of this chapter is that the dread of the Lord fell upon them, and they came out as one.
Yeah.
So even though it was Saul,
yeah,
they came together under him.
Yeah, they came together, and I think
unexpected.
Yeah. So they came together, and that's important. And I think that's what those three numbers really show, is like that they were together. Like that. That's that they were together in there. Let's see. So what else was interesting here?
In the end, Saul had forgiveness for those guys that were against him because he didn't allow them to be killed. The ones that want to stand up for them.
Yeah,
compassion.
It was kind of interesting. They inserted that there in the very end.
Yeah. That's a good point. That's a good point. And it's almost like he'd rather have the unity of the kingdom than have like strict justice type of thing. And you can see that seems to be going well. like that. It seems to be going well. Things are unified.
Like a 180.
Yeah. And so I think that's good. That's good.
That's sort of maybe his first verbal to the people, one-on-one, official decree.
Yeah.
To say that I'm a compassionate king.
Yeah. Like could come together. Yeah. And I think that's good. I think it's good in there.
I do have something I noticed where in the version that was there, they talked about salvation. And when I think of salvation, I think of New Testament. This one said deliverance.
Yeah, salvation and deliverance would be
I was
like
that word was there.
Yeah, so salvation. Well, and this I think is a good example of what's going on. So saving, like if I'm in the road not paying attention and someone comes up and pushes me out of the way of a bus, they saved me. Type of thing. That's all in the New Testament. That's all salvation means as well. So like that's so when he's talking about saving them, they're saving them from these other people.
Immediate danger.
Yeah, the danger that's coming in and all that stuff. And in the New Testament, it's used in that same light.
Just an awful lot more.
Yeah, well, we tended to define things in very narrow paths with the New Testament things. That's why I talk about what the good news means. Like, when you get around church people and you're like, well, what's good news? And they immediately start going straight to like Jesus talk and all that stuff. And what ends up happening when good news is just Jesus things, we can start saying things about Jesus and his relationship to us that is actually very bad news. Like that's, and you can misconstrue it to where you end up calling good news very bad things. So when we start manipulating people, like dangling hell over them and saying like, you better watch out for this stuff, all that stuff. It's like, well, are you spreading good news now, or are you using bad things to cause angst into people to get them to go your way? Type of thing. So that's why I really like good news is good news is when like the Daytona 500 starts in 2 months.
It doesn't.
Like that's good news. Like good. Like that's like you gotta allow for good news to happen. As a boy that grew up in the 90s, like the Braves in the 90s in Atlanta, the Braves were constantly in the World Series and all that. So just constant good news. Things like that. So that's good news. And so allow that feeling then to influence, like, all right, so when we're talking about the good news, what are we talking about? And is it good news? And so, and if the news about Jesus that we're giving to people, if it is actually bad news for them, then maybe it's not so much about Jesus. Maybe it's us wanting us to control what they're doing, type of thing. So that's salvation is the same way. Like it's like what are they being saved from? And so like that's what is the cliff? What is the road that we're being pushed out of them? And it's, for me, that story in the New Testament is saved from death type of thing and given eternal life type of thing. So that's the good news too, that we don't have just death hanging over us.
Well, and that's how I always thought it too. Like the law can't save you.
Yeah.
And so if you tell someone if you don't shape up, you're going to hell, that's law.
Yeah.
That's gospel's the good news.
Exactly. That's not good news. And the thing is that's often called good news.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of why I talk I try to hit that because that's something that I learned very early on in being a pastor. There's just like not a lot of good news in this that I'm teaching here. Why am I calling it good news? So that's when I changed my whole philosophy on preaching and things like that. So yeah, good. The little word studies there. Little word studies. All right. Let's go into 12. Come to 12. There's not a whole lot of like my study Bible here has one sentence of study notes for these 3 chapters we're in right now. Pages. Yeah. There's pages. Well, like in the Jewish study Bibles too, there's so much going on with just history. Like they're establishing the kings right now. And so there's so much going on. If you see something interesting, point it out. So let's go on to 12. So share the screen, click that button, and here we go.
Now Samuel said to all Israel,
Indeed, I have heeded your voice in all that you said to me, and have made a king over you. And now, here is the king, walking before you, and I am old and gray-headed. And look, my sons are with you. I have walked before you from my childhood to this day. Here I am, witness against me before the Lord and before his anointed. Whose ox have I taken, or whose donkey have I taken, or whom have I cheated? Whom have I oppressed? Or from whose hand have I received any bribe with which to blind my eyes? I will restore it to you.
You have not cheated us or oppressed us, nor have you taken anything from any man's hand.
The Lord is witness against you, and his anointed is witness this day that you have not found anything in my hand.
He is witness.
It is the Lord who raised up Moses and Aaron, and who brought your fathers up from the land of Egypt. Now therefore, stand still, that I may reason with you before the Lord concerning all the righteous acts of the Lord, which he did to you and your fathers. When Jacob had gone into Egypt and your fathers cried out to the Lord, then the Lord sent Moses and Aaron, who brought your fathers out of Egypt and made them dwell in this place. And when they forgot the Lord their God, he sold them into the hand of Sisera, commander of the army of Hazor, into the hand of the Philistines, and into the hand of the king of Moab. And they fought against them. Then they cried out to the Lord and said, We have sinned because we have forsaken the Lord and served the Baals and Ashtoreths. But now deliver us from the hand of our enemies, and we will serve you. And the Lord sent Jerubbaal, Bedan, Jephthah, and Samuel, and delivered you out of the hand of your enemies on every side, and you dwelt in safety. And when you saw that Nahash, king of the Ammonites, came against you, you said to me, No, but a king shall reign over us. When the Lord your God was your king. Now therefore, here is the king whom you have chosen and whom you have desired. And take note, the Lord has set a king over you. If you fear the Lord and serve him and obey his voice and do not rebel against the commandment of the Lord, then both you and the king who reigns over you will continue following the Lord your God. However, if you do not obey the voice of the Lord, but rebel against the commandment of the Lord, then the hand of the Lord will be against you, as it was against your fathers. Now, therefore, stand and see this great thing which the Lord will do before your eyes. Is today not the wheat harvest? I will call to the Lord, and he will send thunder and rain, that you may perceive and see that your wickedness is great, which you have done in the sight of the Lord, in asking a king for yourselves.
So Samuel called to the Lord, and the Lord sent thunder and rain that day, and all the people greatly feared the Lord and Samuel. And all the people said to Samuel,
Pray for your servants to the Lord your God, that we may not die. For we have added to all our sins the evil of asking a king for ourselves.
Do not fear. You have done all this wickedness. Yet do not turn aside from following the Lord, but serve the Lord with all your heart, and do not turn aside. For then you would go after empty things, which cannot profit or deliver, for they are nothing. For the Lord will not forsake his people, for his great name's sake, because it has pleased the Lord to make you his people. Moreover, as for me, far be it from me that I should sin against the Lord in ceasing to pray for you. But I will teach you the good and the right way. Only fear the Lord and serve him in truth with all your heart. For consider what great things he has done for you. But if you still do wickedly, you shall be swept away, both you and your king.
All right. All right. Make sure that doesn't start. Okay. All right. So I think there's something interesting about this chapter. Let's see what you guys think first, though. So it's what do you think's going on here? What kind of stood out to you?
That the Lord has not abandoned the people, although they have abandoned him.
Okay. Yes. So the Lord has not abandoned the people, even though they have abandoned him as their king. Right? Yeah. And Kathy, you were.
I'm reading ahead. Saul was 30 years old when he became king.
Yeah. So
but his daddy was still saying,
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean,
he was a little in that, maybe a little slow.
Yeah. So it's and also like 30 is a good number too. Like that's, you got to remember back then, like just strict accounting wasn't as important. We're dealing with approximates, type of ideas here. So like that's, okay. So yeah, was he 30? Yeah.
Dad used to call it an ish time.
Yeah, but it was also, but yeah.
Why do you think Samuel goes to such lengths to clear his name, I guess?
Clear Samuel's name?
Yeah, he says, look, I never did anything bad to you people. He goes quite a long ways with that.
Yeah, no, that's definitely interesting. So verse 4, I think, says something to that. And they said, you have not cheated us or oppressed us, nor have you taken anything from any man's hand. When I was reading the story, that sounded kind of like Eli's sons, and maybe Eli a little bit.
Yeah, that's what I.
Yeah, like
not
that's
wanting to be.
So almost kind of like a yin yang thing with Eli. Mm-hmm. That Samuel, and it's almost like, and here's the thing, is like it's almost like Samuel's going like, my time is done. We have Saul now.
this is what you want.
That doesn't happen, but it's almost like he's relinquishing control to the king type of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this says too, a note on that, especially since he was not engaged in any of the typical behavior of a king.
Mhm.
Right. So foreshadowing, like these things are going to happen to you now. I
Yeah.
didn't do it, but your king's going to.
Okay, yeah, and that's well, and that was also that's a good point, because if you remember what we read last week was that the king will take your people and do all these things. Yeah, that's a good point. The king will do all these things. He'll take, for battles and all of that. So that's a good point too there too.
Saul at this point hasn't shown anything of what he wants of the future either. Isn't really, the only thing he did is when he chopped up the ox, and that was,
he unified people in that way.
He unified them, but that said he was under the spirit of the Lord when that happened.
Yeah,
it wasn't really his. Right now you really don't know where he's going to take them.
Yeah. Yeah.
Doesn't say you get into the next chapter.
Well,
like that's
plot thickens.
Plot thickens. Plot thickens. So what else stood out to you in here? Because there's a big one that I'm going to get to here in a second.
Samuel may have stepped down, but he's still warning the people what will happen.
Yeah. Like what will happen if they kind of do their own thing. Yeah. And this reads really really rough. So it reads really rough. And here's my read of that. Is this to me sounds like it's all part of like this coronation of a king, as we're kind of going through this pageantry type of thing here. And it's almost like at the beginning of the kingship of Saul that Samuel is leading them in a big confession and absolution service. Mm-hmm. Like that, like this, like almost like a ritual. Because you look at how he's saying so much harder than he has been over the last 5 or so chapters. That over here, there's like things are like he's really being rough on him here. And it's like, you have gone away from God. You have gone away from these things. You have done this, that you want a king, and everyone's like, yes, we have. Like that's, and it's almost like a clearing out of getting everything out in the open, before Saul's reign type of thing, which is like a consistent pattern all through Scripture. That's part of why we do confession absolution in our church services. Like it's kind of getting everything out in the open as we go forward into the rest of our lives. I make a big deal out of confession absolution in my wedding ceremonies. Like that's I do a confession absolution. That's always the thing that the bride and groom, when we're talking about it, never want to do. I always have to coax them into it. And then that's always where they're crying during the service. But that's because I think the whole weight of everything, hits them, and they can see the importance of it in the ceremony. And I think it just looks like that to me there. With this kind of leading this full like confession thing as they go forward into this new way.
They made a ceremony out of it.
Yeah. So like I think that's kind of what's going on there. But yeah, Samuel's really hard on him. That's he does, and they just go with it. And they go with it. They're like, yeah, we were all bad, Samuel. Like we were. Like that's.
This one has a good life question at the end of describing the first king part. Have you ever seen God take a bad request made with bad motives and use it for good for His own purposes?
Yeah. And we see that, and we see that constantly, like through there. And so we'll see that. That's the story all through the Bible, like, especially when we get into the Gospels. We see that constant in the Gospels. Let's see. That's basically what we got time for today. Got through 3 chapters, so we're flying, right? It was 3 chapters, but it was like a lot of reading. And just like Gloria said, we start really getting into it next week. So like we really,
Next chapter.
next we really start getting into it then. And so there's a lot of establishment in this one, but I appreciate everyone coming, and we'll invite all the YouTube people like it. So